KP Leung, thank you ever so much for joining us and providing some further insight. We move on now, and in the latest development, NATO allies will meet in Brussels today to discuss continued military support for Ukraine. At the Ukraine Defence Contact Group, co-chaired by Germany and the UK and Germany co-hosting the major defence meeting, bringing together over 50 countries. The Ukraine Defence Contact Group, first formed in 2022 under US leadership, has become the main platform for coordinating military aid to Kyiv. The session comes as Russia continues relentless missile and drone strikes on Ukrainian targets. Defence ministers, NATO leaders and military chiefs are expected to discuss air defences, long-range weapons and the future of Ukraine's defence industry. While the group is separate from NATO, its efforts are closely aligned with the alliance. Both the UK and Germany remain among Ukraine's strongest military backers. But for the first time since the formation of the Ukraine Defence Contact Group, the US Defence Secretary will not attend its meeting. Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth will miss the session in Brussels, marking a sharp shift in US involvement. Hegseth's absence follows his calls for Kyiv to drop its NATO bid and a Trump-era push to transfer Ukraine's military burden to Europe. While over 50 defence leaders gather to discuss support for Ukraine, US military aid remains on hold. Joining us to discuss the significance of this meeting in the midst of the Ukraine-Russia war, Glenn Grant, ex-advisor to the Ukrainian Defence Minister, is joining us from Riga in Latvia. Glenn, as always, thank you for joining us. We've detailed there some of the specifics from previous meetings, but for Ukraine, what is the significance of all of these countries getting together to look at support?
Well, I mean, the good thing is that it actually shows Ukraine that they're not alone. And in many ways, it doesn't go much further than that, because these meetings, that were formerly known as the Ramstein meetings because they were held in Germany, are producing lots and lots of good ideas and lots of promises. But the reality is that things are a lot slower in arriving on being delivered than it would seem by having a meeting. There's no sharpness in these things. So I would say that in reality, it is just another one. But the fact that all those countries are there whilst Hegseth is staying away from it does at least show that everybody else understands that America is now playing second fiddle in this game and is not the lead in any way, shape or form. Whether Hegseth's absence means that America is going to drop its support, I have no idea whatsoever, and I don't think anybody else does. It's all in Trump's head. So I think we're just going to have to wait for the coming weeks. I mean, you will remember that it's only like a week ago Trump said, I will give Putin 2 weeks, which is what he said for the third time. So maybe he's going to give Putin another 2 weeks before he decides on sanctions or better support.
Yes, Glenn, absolutely. I believe we are going to see some live visuals that are coming in from Brussels. This NATO chief, Mark Rutte, who is answering questions amidst, of course, uncertainty over the peace process. Glenn, I'm going to bring you back in while we continue to look at these live visuals from Mark Rutte. Obviously, we know that there have now been 2 instances of direct discussions between Russia and Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky calling for sanctions. This meeting looking at military aid. The US is going to be pivotal potentially to both, with EU nations already placing continuing sanctions on Russia. How important is it that it's a joint sort of operation, not just looking at defence for Ukraine, but also looking at pressure on Russia?
Well, I mean, pressure on Russia is needed because they've made it absolutely clear that they're not seeking peace in any other way other than capitulation of Ukraine. I mean, Medvedev said that this week, and also the Russian ambassador to the United Nations has said exactly the same. So this is the Russian line: is either you give in or we just keep going. So discussions are pretty pointless in that respect because Ukraine can't give in because it's fighting for its own sovereignty. So I think it's really important that there is a show of support from lots of countries, even if the US is not showing much support. But probably more important in all this is that the Western countries have got to find something other than just military support. I mean, they've given sanctions. I mean, the EU talked about sanctioning the banks, but they were talking about sort of 20 banks out of the 350 or so that Russia has got. So sanctions like this are just not going to work. So if sanctions is the only real weapon that they've got handy now, they really have got to actually get their act together and start producing something that has some bite.
Yes, Glenn, if you stay with us, we do bring some breaking updates from Mark Rutte's conference, which is ongoing. While speaking at the press conference ahead of this meeting with the UK and German defence ministers, NATO Chief Mark Rutte says the alliance is boosting defence plans with new capability targets. He called for more resources, forces and logistics to face future threats. He says priorities include air and missile defence, long-range strikes and large land forces to enhance NATO's deterrence and collective security. Glenn, I'm going to bring you back in following that. It is very clear what Mark Rutte is saying here. I want to pick out one point on the long-range strikes. Of course, we saw Operation Spiderweb, which hit deep behind enemy lines. Do you think this is signalling a continuation of that level of military action? And would that say that NATO don't necessarily think this war is ending anytime soon?
I don't think you can link the two things. I mean, what Rutte is saying about NATO is remember, these are plans. And in some cases, like UK, there's not even any money attached to those plans. So UK has been asked to produce capability, strategic defence review, extra capability, but no extra money. So Europe is still not really grasping this nettle. On the terms of long-range strikes, well, what Ukraine has done with its recent thing is shown that, you know, not only missiles can actually do damage at long range. And whether NATO has actually grasped that this is a significant change to business, I'm not sure. I think we'll only see in time whether countries adjust their budgets and start actually looking and training to do things in a different way. At the moment, I don't see that spark amongst the NATO countries.
And Glenn, to finish our discussion, of course, European security is something that has been a hot topic, given the continuing war between Russia and Ukraine. Do you think there could potentially be a shift away from supporting Ukraine to looking more at wider European protection and potentially using Ukraine in that instance and throwing support behind them as a result?
No, not at all. There's no European defence. Don't forget this. Doesn't matter what people talk about. The organisation, defence organisation inside the EU is powerless to do anything other than speak and write papers. There's no command cell in there. There's no centralised battle idea, and therefore there's no centralised capability development across the whole thing. It's all still down to nations, and whilst it's down to nations, there will never be any coherent battle plan or battle system.
Glenn Grant, thank you ever so much for providing that context there. We will, of course, bring you all of the continuing developments